Now, combat. Combat is an interesting thing. It has an exception-based combat system, by which I mean for every rule and declaration they make in a combat section, there's 10 examples of how it works differently or doesn't work in this instance. That's similar to 3.5. For instance, the rules might say you can't move through an enemy's square, but if they're 3 size categories smaller than you, you can. If they're 3 size categories larger than you, you can. You can make an acrobatics check to tumble over them, so on and so forth. It's more realistic, but it's also more rules you need to remember. Compared to 4E, where they just say a hard and fast rule, okay, you can't move through your enemy's square. You might have your players saying, well, why can't I run through the giant's legs? Or it's only a little pixie, I can't move through its square. Simpler, less realistic. In the end, it's a matter of taste. If you like the combat in 3.5, Pathfinder retains the same spirit. So you will like the combat in Pathfinder. If you prefer it in 4.0, well, that's not what Pathfinder is. It has a lot more intricacies and complexities that you need to remember. So you probably know what you like. Pathfinder keeps up the tradition of 3.5. Of course, there are a few things we didn't like in 3.5 almost universally. Grappling, bull rushing, feinting, they were pretty annoying. They all had a bunch of special rules you needed to remember, and most of the time you didn't. So all those things like grappling and disarming, they've been bundled into a combat maneuver check that you roll to handle all of them. But each one handles the combat maneuver check a little differently, and there's special rules to remember for each one. So it's not much of an improvement. It's a little simpler, but it's still fairly complicated for something you're barely going to use. Next up is the magic section. This was probably my least favorite section in reading the book, because I just found it the most poorly written. There would be several instances where I could say, well, give me an example of it. Like the rules would say, you don't need to memorize each version of a spell if you're casting a spell that has different versions. And I would say, what does that mean? Give me an example of a spell like that. But the magic system, basically the same as 3.5. One of the big changes is level 0 spells you can cast an unlimited amount of times, and concentration is no longer a skill. It works more like a caster level check, and it seems harder if you get disrupted to maintain your spells. So not big changes. I appreciate the 0 level spells being unlimited. Obviously they needed to change a few 0 level spells to make that work. Cure minor wounds would have been a big break if you could cast an unlimited amount of times. But overall I appreciate the effect, and the characters feel more magical and a little more powerful. That seems to be one of the themes of Pathfinder. Everybody got juiced up a little bit in power level, because most of the abilities that they used to have, they still have, plus a little bit of extra versatility, a little extra oomph from their class features. Moving on to the actual spells, all the spells you love are here, and most of them are the same. The biggest changes are spells that alter your stats significantly, like shape change spells, like spells that let you change into an animal or an elemental. They've been simplified, so you don't need to have the stats for every animal you might potentially turn into in front of you. It just gives you the movement powers and certain ability score bonuses and so on. It's much simpler, and that goes for druids too. So almost no change there, but where there is, it's simplified. And then lastly is the prestige classes. All your favorites are in this book. The Arcane Archer, the Arcane Trickster, the Duelist, the Eldritch Knight, the heavy hitters of prestige classes are in here. They're basically how you left them. How you loved them, they're the same. Not much to say about them. overall, I really like Pathfinder. But there's something to consider. Pathfinder made the promise that it's going to be compatible with all your 3.5 materials. That's not entirely true. A lot of the classes and prestige classes are obsolete or need to be modified a little bit to accommodate the new rules. Adventures and monsters are probably going to be a little bit weak because, as I said, the powers for characters jumped up a little bit. Not significantly enough that they're going to breeze through the encounters, but things are going to be a little easier. That said, even without the 3.5 stuff, which I know you spent a lot of money on, and you should be able to use it with just a little bit of conversion, Pathfinder stands well on its own. It's a solid system, and I anticipate playing it a lot myself. So Pathfinder gets a big thumbs up, and not just because I'm trying to work for Paizo. So until next time, good luck and good rolling.